everybody literally just went like this.
That's right. You're on.
You're on stage. You can't do anything.
Boys and girls of every age, wouldn't you like to see something strange? Come with us and have some fun right here now at GalaxyCon, where we are bringing the convention experience directly to you. Hello, friends. Today we are going back to Halloween Town with 2 cast members from The Nightmare Before Christmas. So without further ado, let's open the jack-o'-lantern door on the holiday trees and bring them out to our world. Our first guest is an actor and cabaret singer whose body of work includes an award-winning role in the original cast of Ain't Misbehavin', Torch Song Trilogy, Dreamgirls, and All Dogs Go to Heaven. Today he joins us to discuss his role as the Oogie Boogie. Please welcome back our friend Ken Page.
Hello. Greetings.
Hello.
Greetings
Hello.
and salutations.
And to you as well, Ken. How have you been?
I've been well. I've been hot mostly. I was in Dallas where it was 101, and here in St. Louis it's 99, 100 today. But I'm in the air conditioning, so I'm okay.
Yeah.
But I've been good.
Oh, absolutely. So glad to have you back. Everything's all right in your side of the world?
Yeah, no complaints.
All right.
Complaints.
All right.
Glad to
Ken,
be with you today.
Oh, always glad to have you back, sir. And let's bring out our second guest. He is an actor whose body of work includes Dog Day Afternoon, Fright Night, Child's Play, and an adorable forgotten movie called The Princess Bride. Today, he joins us to discuss his role as the speaking voice of the Pumpkin King himself, Jack Skellington. Please welcome back the always awesome Chris Sarandon.
Hiya, kids. Hiya, kids. Anybody remember Froggy the Gremlin?
Hiya.
Yeah,
I've seen the footage of it. He better become visible. Plunk your magic twagger, Froggy.
That's right. Hiya, kids. Hiya. That's not my real voice, folks. But anyway, hi guys, hi fans. Nice to see you today. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Ken. Hello, Patty.
Chris, how are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. I'm not nearly as hot as Ken is.
Nobody's as hot as I am.
Hey.
One way or another.
I had to take the joke.
But it's lovely where I am, and it's warm. It's in the 80s, so it's a summertime in the
it is. It's pretty hot here in Orlando, and of course it's all muggy and rainy as well too, because the Florida Board of Tourism does not want people to know that it rains in Florida every day in the summertime. So we'll keep that a secret. So well, gentlemen, welcome back to the GalaxyCon virtual stage. It's always an absolute wonder to have you all here today. Our team's going through the chat room right now, pulling out the questions for you. In the meantime, I was trying to think what I haven't asked you boys yet, because we've done this dance several times. And I thought of this. I thought this might be an interesting experiment. And maybe you have done this in the past. How would you describe Nightmare Before Christmas to somebody that hasn't seen it yet?
Ooh.
It doesn't have to be in an advertising copy sort of way. Just at a conversation late at a party. It's just like, I think I've heard of that movie. You're in it?
Yes. Right. I would say that it's something that is both from a standpoint of its visual artistry and also from its character development is unique in the annals of animation, and that it's has to be seen to be believed. How about that?
Yeah,
that works.
Yeah, I would probably say, at the risk of there being another, that I would say it's probably the penultimate stop action motion picture.
Yep.
I think it's also one of the most outstanding scores ever written for something that would be quote unquote animated. And I think it's a multi-holiday experience.
Aha.
Yeah.
You probably answered one of the questions from the fans too.
That old question.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. No, that's a good way to put it. I would absolutely see that. I think my short version of it has been it's an extremely unique stop motion film. Yeah, probably will never be replicated again. And if it would, the technology would change. It's like
yes.
I said the same thing when we have our friends from the Tron film. I said, like, that's a movie that can never be made the same way again, because it was that moment in time. Yeah. And same thing with the technology with this film. It was a moment in time where It was, they had
Yeah.
computers and
Yes.
they helped, but it was this wonderful, and that,
literally a frame at a time.
Yeah.
and it just gave that wonderful, just slight jerkiness
Yeah.
that I think is the charm.
And I always think of it now more than ever as a work of art. It's popular,
Absolutely.
it's all the different things, but it really, because of all those things you just said, it really is a work of art because people really created it. It wasn't just created by some other means other than human input.
Yep.
And that makes it, to me, a work of art.
Yes, you can almost see the hands at work, the hands that were manipulating the animatronics and the various elements of the stop motion. I just think it's extraordinary, and it's hard for me to describe it actually in a way.
And to Kid's point about it being art, it's like, yeah, I mean, we look at again, motion picture as product or content or whatever, but this really was a tremendous, and it's a collaborative piece of art too.
Yeah. And interesting what you just said, Patty. You said that it was a motion picture, and it is literally that, a series of motion pictures, which is how movies started.
Yep.
And up until probably 30 or 40 years ago, movies were called pictures. They weren't called films.
Yeah.
You know, and I find that really interesting when you see people from the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, particularly, talk about the film industry. They don't talk about the film industry. They talk about the motion picture business.
Yeah.
Right. The motion picture business.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll find somebody a little older that calls it the flickers.
Right.
Wow.
Hi, gentlemen. We are good to go to audience questions. So thank you for indulging my curiosity. Let's go ahead and see what our audience has to say. And the first question comes from Rebecca, and she would love to know, is there a special scene or moment from Nightmare Before Christmas that just makes you smile or that you remember the most?
Anything?
Yeah, I always think, and I don't know why this fascinates me, but I love those Dracula guys, I call them. That little trio that moves around. Whenever they came on the screen, it always, and still does, make me smile. There's something inherently, I don't know, there's some humor attached to them that's specific to those guys in the film. There's all kinds of amazing characters and so forth.
They're kind of like my favorite sort of side characters too. I like the fact that I think they may have been a little inspired by Edward Gorey, his artwork. So I see a little bit of that in too, and I just love the fact that they had the parasols, and I call them parasols, not umbrellas, for the sun, and the way they would sort of
they kind of glide,
float across the screen.
Yes, you know,
and their music was always dissonant. You know, it was always like they had some other thing going on.
The one that I think of, just, you know, as I saw the question, this is what came to mind was, what's the doctor's name? The evil genius doctor?
Oh my God!
Anybody remember his name?
Chat room, help me out here on this one. I'm drawing a blank too.
Yeah, help us, folks. At any rate, I remember, because I know the actor, or knew the actor who played it, William Hickey.
Bill Hickey, yeah.
Who had such a distinctive voice, and he was so perfect for that character.
Yeah.
And also the fact that he was a mechanical thing in a way, because he couldn't get around except on his motorized wheelchair. And I don't know, that to me has a similar kind of the juxtaposition of the macabre and the humor. Makes me think immediately of him. Yeah.
Dr. Finkelstein.
Thank you very much. It's a play on Frankenstein.
Yeah. And
I always loved and thought that he sounded, for those who remember Betty Davis, I always thought he sounded like Betty Davis to me. Every time I see it, I still think so. Yeah. Oh, Jack! It's always a little Betty Davis in there.
Yeah.
He had that wonderful vocal affectation. That the way it was a back roll.
That vocal fly kind of thing. Yeah. And he was also famous he did a lot of voiceovers, Bill Hickey. Yeah. And he was the one, there was he played a character in I can't remember the name of the movie now, a Jack Nicholson movie, in which he would constantly say, "You asked for it, you got it, Toyota." and repeat it through the whole movie, which would
Pritzi's Honor.
meant to drive you crazy. What?
Pritzi's Honor.
Pritzi's Honor.
Yeah, Pritzi's Honor. Right. Thank you very much, Patty. You encyclopedia, you.
That's how I got this job. I just
know
ask all this stuff.
Okay.
All this useless stuff. Well, Rebecca, thank you. That was a wonderful question to start us off with. And here's one from Cherry. Ooh. Do you gentlemen have a favorite theater or musical theater show?
Well, I've got one right off the top of my head, just because, and this is purely self-serving, because I was in it. A show called The Light in the Piazza, which was I don't know, 8, 10, 12 years ago, a long time ago, in current years, that I was in at the Lincoln Center. And it was just so gloriously beautiful to watch. It was moving. It was an extraordinary evening in the theater. I got a chance to watch it because I was a replacement in the show. So I got to watch it probably 10 or 12 times before I actually was in it. And every night, at some point in the show, I started weeping. And it wasn't necessarily because of what was going on in the show, but just because it was so beautifully conceived and so gloriously put together.
The leaves, the hat flying. I mean,
and it was so emotional. The story itself was,
it's a beautiful story. I tried to get an opera company to put it in their repertoire. They were going to do Showboat, and I said, "Well, I'll pass on getting on that boat." And and I said, "What about Light in the Piazza?" And they were like, "Oh, well, I don't know." I said, "I'm telling you, if you introduce your opera audience to it, they will fall in love with it."
Oh yeah, and there's glorious music in it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Vocal music, particularly. What's yours, friend?
Well, I got a few, and I have to say, other than the ones I was in, but I saw Company recently, and thinking about it right off the top of my head, I remember being in college, and this was already some years after it had been on Broadway by a couple of 2, 3, and we listened to it every day in the green room, before going to class. Ba-da-bum, ba-da-bum, ba-da, Bobby, Booby, Bobby, Dad. And it just sits in my mind as like the ultimate sound of Broadway from the 70s, I guess. Mm-hmm. And when I saw the revival recently, which was wonderful, I thought, like you, Chris, it made me a little teary because it brought back every burgeoning idea that I had about theater and Broadway and what I could be in it and what it meant and represented. Yeah. And something about it just triggers me when I hear that. Company.
Oh.
Yeah. Great show.
Very nice. My latest favorite is Night Must Fall, the play, because I found my grandfather was an actor briefly. He was actually moving towards being a director. He was actually directing some live stuff for CBS. Then he got recalled into service for Korea, and he got shot down and died. But I found some pictures of him on stage, so I had to do kind of a forensic deep dive. It's just like, what play is this? And we finally sort of tracked it down among some friends. One director friend of mine was like, "That's Night Must Fall. That's Night Must Fall." So I
don't know the plot. I don't know it at all.
Psychological thriller. Yeah. So that's. So then we've all got something to go look after, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Sherry, thank you. Wonderful question. Thank you. What do we have next? From Daniel. What was one of your favorite experiences of working with Tim Burton?
Well, I always preface by saying I never worked with Tim Burton, unfortunately. Most people think we all did. I think Chris did. But I never met him until later on, actually. I never worked with him. Working in his world was absolutely amazing, as created by our director, Henry Selick, and that whole amazing crew. But working with him personally, never got to. Still not over. I'm still alive. He's still alive. It could still happen. But his world is so fascinating to be part of.
I did have the opportunity to work with Tim after the principal photography, if you want to call it that, was finished. Then I felt after watching the finished version that there were some line readings that I'd love to redo. And I heard from the producers that Tim wanted to redo some stuff as well. So he and I got together afterward in a studio and reworked some of the lines, not all of them. And I got a chance over a couple of days to spend time with him, and it was a wonderful experience. He's a lovely man, very collaborative, not at all dictatorial, very, very much a person who appreciates the artists, quote unquote, who are working for him in his world, as Ken said.
Yeah.
So it was a terrific experience, and I came away with it from it rather with an added appreciation for his artistry.
There you have it. Daniel, thank you. Very good one. What do we have next? From Madison. I'll backtrack this up a little bit. Maybe who inspired you? Because you're actors first. So you play it this way. You can say, did someone maybe inspire you when you first were doing some of this voice acting stuff? Or maybe it was someone who inspired you just in acting in general?
Well, my first inspiration was a teacher. It had nothing to do with voice acting, but it was about acting itself. College teacher, acting class, essentially, who basically just said, you're good at this, keep doing it. And I was off, involved in so many other things other than theater. I wasn't really interested in theater at the time. And this guy basically just lit a fire under me saying, you have a talent, take advantage of it. And that sort of, follows itself into from acting to voice acting. It's not all that different. It's just a sort of heightened version. So that's the person who, his name was Chuck Neal.
And doing that other stuff you mentioned, I would have loved to have seen you in your improv days.
That was fun. I had a great time doing improv.
Yeah, I would say, of course, teachers, so many wonderful, wonderful people I was fortunate to been inspired by and to have them instill their love of theater in me, and on and on and on, from nuns in grade school to high school teachers to professors in college and so forth. But as specifically for voice, the first time I remember being impressed by voice-over work that I thought that's amazing is when I went to see the film The Exorcist. And when was that? Like 70 something,
73, something like that. Yeah.
Somewhere around there. And of course, I was aware that what I was hearing was not necessarily the person I was seeing, because I'd read a few things about it. And I remembered coming away from it thinking the work that person, and it took me a minute to correlate that Mercedes McCambridge was Mercedes McCambridge,
I was just getting ready to ask, yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that is amazing. If someone can do that vocally and create the visuals were, of course, obviously what they were. But for me, it was the psychology of the sound of the voice that got to me most. Pea soup is pea soup. The head turns around, that's all. Yeah, but the voice really, really affected me. Being a good Catholic boy, but it really affected me. And, there's other parts of the story. I got to meet her later. That's another story. But it really, really made me aware that there was such a thing, because the other places, I don't think it existed anywhere else other than the Disney films or, the few off animated TV things, stuff like that. It just wasn't a world that I was really dialed into at all. But that was the first time I remember thinking, that's an art form. That's another art form.
And I guess I must add, just in terms of my formative years, Mel Blanc, who did all the voices for almost all the voices for all of the cartoon characters that came out of Warner Brothers, right?
Right.
Yeah. Bugs Bunny.
Right.
But the extraordinary breadth of his talent. And the fact that he was, when you looked at Mel Blanc, the guy with a little black mustache, any of the characters he ever played, but he was.
And all of them.
Yeah. And played all of them.
Yes, and that still wasn't the whole breadth of his life. If you listen to his old radio work as well, too, he was pulling left field voices all over the place.
Yeah.
It's when we hold voiceover actors for our events, it's always just said, it takes about, there's about 14 guys now to replace Mel Blanc.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, it's I could do Bugs Bunny. I've done Bugs Bunny for them too. They say, can you do Daffy? I try to do Daffy and I can't get it, but he could do Daffy. Yeah. So
right.
the enormity of this,
So let's give props to Mel Blanc.
Absolutely.
Always. And Madison, give props to you as well. That was a great question. Thank you. And what do we have next? From Stacy. Ooh, what are your favorite hobbies or something that brings you joy in your day?
Well, what a lovely question. That's really lovely. It really is.
It is.
Morning coffee. When I get up early, and even if the birds aren't singing, I have a bird CD that I.
Really?
Oh yeah, I've been doing it for years. I even did it when they were on LPs, right? And people would call and go, "Where are you?" I'm in my apartment. They go, "You sound like in the middle of a forest someplace." And that's the idea. Yeah. Morning coffee, the sound of my birds, taped or otherwise, and just that contemplative time at the top of the day.
Sure.
That's my favorite part of the day. Usually.
I have two. One is working in my garden. I have been a gardener for most of my adult life, starting when I was in my late 20s. And believe me, there were a lot of years after my 20s. So I've been gardening. I had a friend who I lived near who had a garden and who knew everything about vegetable gardening particularly. And he took me under his wing and showed me just basically how to deal with everything. And since then, that's my getaway, and that and pruning trees, working outside. That's my contemplative time. And oddly enough, my grandchildren, spending time with them, which puts you in a different kind of zone where you're not thinking about what's going on in the world. You're dealing with a frame of mind that's very immediate and is not at all adult. And that's very liberating and in many ways a contemplative experience.
Yeah.
And as we've said before, you have a fair amount of grandkids.
A few, yeah.
So that
How many again, Chris? I forget.
9.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's a sitcom.
And we're going away together. My family, including the kids, we're going to Europe for a week together, and then they're going off on their own. That should be interesting. 8 kids. This is a group of 8. 8 kids in Europe for a week in one house.
Okay.
And all right, so it started as a sitcom, and now,
right. I'll revisit this answer then. Let's see if I'm contemplative about it then.
It started as a sitcom, and now it's a reality show.
Yes, right.
There we have it. Oh, Stacy, thank you so much. That was a great question. And what do we have next? From Amber, what advice would you give to anyone who is interested, I'll just say acting in general?
The first word that comes out of my mouth is don't.
Yeah. Somebody told me early on, they said, this wonderful actress named Teresa Merritt, she was playing Bloody Mary. I was doing South Pacific. And I was very young and starry-eyed. I hadn't been to New York yet. And I said to her, Miss Merritt, what would you say? Same question. And she said, why do you want to do it? And I said, because I have to. And she said, okay, then that's the right reason. She said, if you don't have to, if you can live without it, live without it. If you have to, go. She said, but study. And her advice in a capsule was keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut because you don't know anything. And she was right, going in at the beginning. Keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut because you don't know anything. So learn,
Yep. And that's brilliant advice, because studying doesn't only mean going to an acting class.
Right. Right.
Studying also means watching people in life. And experiencing life. I usually tell young people, if they're interested in acting, go someplace where there's a good acting program, but also make sure that it's also a good institution of higher learning where you can learn more than just about the theater. You can learn about the world that you live in, because that's what you're reflecting.
Right.
you're
and
not.
so many programs do get isolated.
Yeah.
And they're wonderful programs, a few master classes, things like that. And you talk to them and they're dying the wool and they're burning with the fire of theater and everything. And you mention something that might influence the theater or might influence them in the theater, and you draw a blank.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, this is not good. So, I think the teachers, when I leave, they're always like, oh, God, don't bring him back here again. Because I'm always telling them, get out, do things. Don't just sit here and absorb the craft of it. Get out and understand what you're going to apply the craft to.
Yeah.
And the craft. The craft is the tools that you use to express it too, but life, that's an observation and how many of us pulled a character off of like, oh yeah, some hot dog vendor I got like 12 years ago. That's where I stole that voice from or whatever.
That's right.
You have to go through things. You have to have your heart broken at some point in your life. You have to have fallen in love and then have somebody break your heart. You have to have lost someone at some point. I mean, I'm not saying this is necessarily you don't go out and say, oh, okay, now it's time to lose grandma.
Sorry, grandma, but
right. But this is part of my learning experience. No, it's essentially exactly what the woman who spoke to you, Ken. It's a brilliant way of describing it. But I said don't because it also means that you have to have a very thick skin. You have to be willing to accept rejection constantly throughout your career, not just, if you read, I just read a very interesting interview in the New York Times with Tom Hanks, and he was talking about transitions in his career and what he had to go through to make sure that he kept his career going, because he couldn't just keep doing the same thing all the time, because it was going to play itself out in the public's mind. So it's not just a matter of, the constant rejection is there all the time, and you have to be willing to deal with that.
Right. Yeah. Putting it together. It's a Sondheim song. Everything you do, you still audition. The art of making art is putting it together.
Yeah.
Right.
And you never stop.
No, there's that wonderful that show Hacks on HBO with Gene
Love Hacks. Oh, it's
that
so good.
Speech she gives about I'm good. I should hope so. Good is the minimum. You can't just rest on that. You got to keep going, and it never stops. Right. It never stops. And but in a more positive way, I will say, just remember, it is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
That's right. And also, I read something that Tom Hanks quoted Spencer Tracy: "Learn the lines, hit your marks, tell the truth." Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there you have it. Amber.
And that's probably the hardest thing to do. Everything else is learning the lines. Oh my God.
We have some minor script changes. Take 10 minutes and just do your thing.
Right.
That was always my favorite on sitcoms, when just before tape they'd walk up to you with a green page.
Yeah.
And say, "Oh, we changed your speech. Here's the new one. Go."
Yeah. Well, 40 or 50 years ago, it wasn't as hard. Now,
it's tricky.
At any rate, thank you for that question.
Yeah, Amber, best of luck and may you break many legs.
Yeah.
What do we have next? From Michelle. Were you gifted or did you get to keep anything from the set?
Were you gifted? Oh, I see.
Yes. Maybe they said it the other way too.
I mean, we are gifted, of course. Right?
Yes.
Of course we're gifted.
And I know, Chris, you have something from the set.
I have several. Yeah, I have several articles. I have some of the Jack heads. I have 4 of the Jack original of the 400, I think there were. And I also have Jack's blackboard. That's I had something else, and I can't remember what it was, but it's gone now, whatever it was. So.
Yeah, I had. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm done.
You're done. I had Oogie's dice. They gave me the dice that you see him roll, and they roll across, and a little snake comes out of it.
Yeah.
And I had them up to a point, but I had that and something else. I had something else too, but that was the main thing. I could kick myself for not holding on to them now.
You didn't hold on to them. Oh,
I did not. No. Somebody made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were they dice-sized dice, or were they different?
No, they
size
were oversized. They were the larger size because that was the close-up dice, I guess.
All right,
I'm sure there's several others because they were different.
In fact, would somebody like to see the blackboard?
Sure.
Yeah.
Ooh. We've seen this before, but for our new viewers, this is a delight.
Yes. Oh, how cool.
Very cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is great.
A little worn around the edges, but it's that's it.
Now,
I love the little stand thing for it. It's so typical of the set. Yeah.
Yeah.
The little wire thing. Yeah, look at that.
Look at the detail.
Cool.
Wow.
So great.
Yeah. Now, is that painted or is that actual chalk?
No, it's painted.
Okay, good, because if it was chalk, I'm afraid. Yeah,
no.
I was just like, wow, you got a marvelous job preserving it. Yeah. Because you never know if it was an animated thing, that could have been. So
yes, changing it.
Indeed. Oh, wonderful question. Thank you for that. And here's one from Erica. What theme song would you say is the one for your life?
From the movie or just in general?
In general.
Oh boy. Oh. What do you think, Ken? Do you have one?
Yeah, because I've been doing my cabaret again of recent, as you know, Chris. And I started doing this song. I always loved it, and I always wanted to do it. But I realized in telling some sort of a narrative that it is the theme song that I have sung to myself all my career. When I was in high school, when I was in college, when I went up to go to New York, when I went to auditions every day in New York. And I say in the show, as a matter of fact, I sang it before I came in here tonight, you know. And cheese. But Don't Rain on My Parade. And aside from it being, you know, of course, from a popular film, movie, blah, blah, Barbara, it really says how I feel about life. It always has. It was inspirational at a point, and now it's determinational. That's what I like to call. You know, who says it? Who told you you're allowed to rain on my parade? If I take a spill, it's me and not you. You know, and on and on and on. And it still proves to be. I find myself humming it often. Don't tell me not to live, just sit and and the older I get, the more I need to sing it. Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I can. There's a song that I love that is actually apropos of a kind of view of life. It's specifically a love song, but it's very much about staying in the moment in your life, which is it could happen to you. And also, it's such a beautiful lyric, and the melody is so gorgeous. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 it could happen to you. It's really something. So anyway, that's kind of the one that sticks with me anyway.
No, there you have it. I'm just a fool whose intentions are good. Please don't let me be misunderstood. That's me. Erica, great question. Thank you. What do we have next? From Jeffrey. What is your favorite line or quote from any character you have played?
I think mine is from a musical I got to do on Broadway many years ago called Ain't Misbehavin'. And it's a quote from the person that the show was about, the music of Thomas Fats Waller. And his catchphrase was, "One never knows, do one."
Oh, that's great.
And that's the one. One never knows, do one.
Yeah, that's it.
I have to say, there are two lines from something that I was in, a version of the Tale of Two Cities, a Tale of Two Cities. The final line of the piece. It's a far, far better thing than I've ever done. I'm not quoting it properly because I don't have it in front of me. It's a far, far better place I go to than I've ever known, which is so quintessentially Charles Dickens.
Yeah.
And then the beginning line of the first line and the last line of the novel are both extraordinary. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Yeah.
Which is where we are now.
Oh, yeah.
So those are the two that stick in my mind.
Mm-hmm. And again, we've talked about this on stage, that you played both the titular characters in those roles, and that was the old days of where you had to film at one scene and then you had to go to a costume change and they covered up the camera and you had to,
Yeah, it was crazy.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, wonderful question. Thank you for that. And what do we have next? From Arthur. Was there any funny behind the scenes moments in, on the set, that's supposed to, or in the booth that you could share? How about from anything you've done?
Behind the scenes moments on the set. Anything. Well, can you think of anything right off, Ken?
Yeah, what just came to my mind, I mean, there's a gazillion, of course, but I remember doing Cats, and it was early on in previews, and they were testing out the smoke machine. And if anybody's seen the DVD or the show, the tire used to rise up in the air up to the level of the first balcony. And there would be a lot of fog and, twinkling lights and things. So early on, when they were trying to get the ratio right, I got up there, and I'm up there on this tire by myself, and you couldn't see a thing. All I could see, it was like being out in the middle of space. I could see little twinkling lights off in the, somewhere out on the other side of the park. And I looked down to the stage where the cast was, but I couldn't see anything.
The last place you wanted to be was up high.
Yeah. And I thought, remember this, because first of all, it'll never happen again, because the people, if you can't see the people, they can't see you. Hello. And that dawned on me second, because I thought, oh, this is really amazing. And I thought, they don't see you at all. They just see fog and smoke. But I remember looking around and thinking, get into it. Just kind of go with it, because this is special, and nobody else is going to experience this but you at this moment, and it won't happen again. And that's what I always think about, being up there. And one other I'll say, and it wasn't me, but I was doing another show, Again, Name is Behaving, and this one woman who was in the show walked into the, you're off scenes, you're off stage, and she walked into the room and she was standing there, and I looked at her, I said, what's the matter with you? And she looked at me, she said, I wonder where I think I'm going. I just thought, I said, you need an off day. I wonder where I think I'm going. I thought, oh, that's too deep for me. You got it.
I just always think of a moment with, I did a play many years ago at the Amundsen and at the Brooklyn Academy of Music with Rex Harrison, an actor from way back. And Rex was an older gentleman at the time, and not particularly fun to work with at the time. And he also was having trouble remembering his lines in the play. So he had a guy walking around beside him. The play was called The Devil's Disciple, and he was playing a general. So he had the luxury of having an aide-de-camp with him all the time, who was carrying around a book that he was ostensibly writing down all of the things that the general was saying, but he was, in fact, had the Rex Harrison script, so that he could lean in and whisper in his ear as if he was consulting him about something military, right?
That's smart.
Yes. And so Rex followed him around the whole time. And as it turned out, in this very end of the play, the character I'm playing, Dick Dudgeon, is saved from hanging at the last minute. General Burgoyne wanted to hang him, and then he's saved by the Reverend Morel, who's actually, it's very complicated at any rate. So all Rex had to do was turn to his assistant, not this guy, but somebody else who was dying to hang dying to hang Dick Dudgeon, the character I was playing. And all he had to do was say, disappointed, Major Swindon, because the guy was pissed off that he was saved, that Dick Dudgeon was saved. And Rex Harrison, of course, didn't have his aide-de-camp with him because he had just had the one line, right? And he goes, disappointed, Mr. Thing. And because Rex was not particularly venerated or loved by the cast, everybody literally just went like this.
That's right. You're on.
You're on stage. You can't do anything. So everybody just literally lost it.
Oh, wow. And that goes back to the earlier point about treat your coworkers, your castmates with respect, no matter what your station is.
That's right. Amen.
Absolutely. Arthur, there you have it. Okay, I think we have time for one more. Maybe we can go on a really fun one. Let's see what producer Paul has for us. From Gene.
Ooh.
Oh, if a genie granted you 3 wishes right now, what would one of them be? If you have 3, you can say that.
I don't want to be political, so I have to.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think. All the things.
I would say that by some miracle, the Russians were turned back in Ukraine, and in Syria, and in wherever else they're causing trouble around the world.
That's fair. That is fair.
Well, I'll go to the other end. I won't say anything because there's so many. There's a list.
Yeah, there's
there's a real list. My goodness. I think the one thing I would probably say, if I had a wish, I would wish there was no such thing as COVID and all of its ramifications and permutations and so forth.
That's a great wish.
Particularly according to the performing arts.
Yeah. It's made a big difference to us. Yeah.
How about I flip the question like this? Because sometimes I throw this out. If you had 3 wishes, what would the third wish be? So it's like you've got the 2 heavy stuff out of the way, and maybe that third one you can allow yourself.
Oh yeah.
Some little. I wish I could fly, or I wish I get this. So, what would that third? Okay, I can do something just for me. Wish be?
I wish I had a villa on a beautiful hillside in Tuscany. That would be my third wish.
With birds.
With what? With birds.
With birds.
Real ones. And a lot of wine.
and
a good cook.
And I wish my villa were on a beautiful hillside in Greece.
We could visit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, gentlemen, as always, it's been my absolute delight to host you. Once again, thank you for joining us here on the GalaxyCon virtual stage. Thank you to our audience for joining us. And as always, thank you for your great questions. Hope to see everybody again soon. Until then, bye-bye, take care. And remember, friends, smiles are free. Spend them often.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.